welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going to be exploring something today
Oh, yeah.
that's pretty interesting, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's a topic that people maybe whisper about
Right.
a little bit more than discuss openly, and that is mindful sex.
Mindful sex.
So we're going to be diving deep into
Okay.
a blog post by Lunarize.
Okay.
And she has kind of a spiritual perspective on this.
Very interesting.
And refers to sex as sacred energy exchange.
It is. It definitely piques your interest, right?
Yeah.
And I think, we can approach Lunarize's views with respect and see how they hold up against, our scientific understanding and maybe challenge a few of our conventional notions along the way.
Exactly. I mean, sacred energy exchange sounds pretty intense.
It does.
I think Lunarize believes that sex is much more than just a physical act.
Right.
It's this profound exchange that can impact us really deeply, on an emotional and even spiritual level.
Interesting.
So what do you make of that?
Well, the idea that sex is a powerful force is something that, many cultures have recognized for centuries, right? Yeah. And I think what's interesting here is how Lunarize is bringing kind of a modern, almost self-help spin to it.
Okay.
Right? And, from a purely biological perspective, there's no denying that sex triggers a cascade of hormones and neurochemicals that profoundly affect our brains and bodies.
That's what's so fascinating about this deep dive. It's like bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and modern science.
Yeah, exactly.
Lunarize talks about this concept of energetic imprinting.
Interesting.
Particularly for women.
Okay.
Suggesting that sexual experiences can leave a lasting imprint.
Got it.
On a woman's energy field, which is where things get a bit mystical for me.
That's definitely a concept that warrants further exploration, right? While energy fields aren't something that we can measure scientifically, the idea that our experiences, especially intimate ones, shape us, is well supported by psychology.
Right.
Think about attachment theory, for instance.
Sure.
Our early relationships and experiences really lay the foundation for how we connect with others later in life.
Right.
And it's not a far leap to consider that sexual experiences, especially those that involve vulnerability and deep connection, could also have a lasting impact on our emotional and psychological well-being.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's like, those experiences become part of our emotional blueprint.
Exactly.
And Lunarize really emphasizes the feminine experience, describing women as receivers.
Interesting.
In this energetic exchange.
Okay.
And I'm curious to kind of unpack that a little bit further.
It's an intriguing concept, isn't it? And it resonates with many women's lived experience of feeling deeply affected by their sexual partners. Yeah. Sometimes in ways that they can't quite explain.
Right.
Now, whether this is due to some mystical energy transfer or simply the complex interplay of hormones, emotions, and psychological imprinting, that's up for debate.
I was wondering if there's any scientific evidence to support this idea of energetic imprinting.
While there's no direct scientific evidence to support the concept of energetic imprinting as Lunarize describes it.
Got it.
There is a growing body of research that sheds light on the profound and lasting impact of sexual experiences on both men and women.
Okay.
For instance, studies have shown that sexual trauma can lead to significant changes in brain structure and function. Yeah. Affecting everything from emotional regulation to stress response.
So even if we can't definitively prove the existence of energy fields, we can't deny that sex has the power to shape us on a very deep level.
Yeah.
And this brings us to Lunarize's central argument about the importance of mindful sex.
Right.
She seems particularly concerned about the potential consequences of what she calls unconscious or unmindful sexual encounters.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the most immediate and significant consequences of unplanned sex can be, of course, unplanned pregnancy.
Right.
And while Lunarize approaches this from a spiritual perspective, emphasizing motherhood as a sacred role, I think it's crucial to acknowledge the very real social and economic factors at play.
Right. Unplanned pregnancy doesn't just affect the woman involved. It has ripple effects on partners, families, and even communities.
Absolutely.
We're talking about access to healthcare, education, economic stability, and a whole web of interconnected issues.
Yeah, precisely. And, while Lunarize might frame it in terms of energetic readiness, from a societal standpoint, we need to ensure that women have access to resources and support to make informed choices about their reproductive health.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
It's not just about individual choices. It's about creating a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive regardless of their circumstances.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it seems like we're talking about a lot more than just, the physical act of sex here. Lunarize connects mindful sex to deeper emotional connections and greater satisfaction for both partners. Which is something I think a lot of people are seeking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where the principles of mindfulness, regardless of your spiritual beliefs, can be incredibly beneficial, right? It's about bringing awareness to the present moment, being attuned to your own body and your partner's, communicating openly and honestly. These are skills that can enhance any relationship, not just romantic ones.
That's interesting because, Lunarize's perspective seems to kind of challenge the more casual approach to sex that's prevalent in modern dating culture. She's really emphasizing intentionality and reverence.
That's a great observation. I think that tension is something that's worth exploring.
Okay.
If we consider the idea that sex is this potent force that can, deeply impact us, then the context in which it happens becomes incredibly important. It's not just about who you're doing it with, but also the, emotional and mental state you're bringing to the experience.
I'm starting to understand why Lunarize is so passionate about teaching children about mindful sex. Like, we're laying the groundwork for healthier relationships and a more conscious approach to sexuality from a young age. But I have to admit, I'm a little curious what that would actually look like in practice.
So imagine a sex education curriculum that goes beyond just the mechanics, right? And actually addresses the emotional, the relational, and even ethical dimensions of sex, right? It would involve teaching consent, respect, communication, and really helping young people understand the profound impact that sexual experiences can have on their lives.
That sounds like a much more holistic and empowering approach to sex education than what a lot of us received growing up.
Exactly. It's about moving away from shame and fear-based messaging and instead fostering a sense of respect, agency, and responsibility. It's about understanding that sex can be a source of pleasure and connection, but it also requires maturity, awareness, and respect for oneself and others.
It seems like Lunarize is advocating for kind of a paradigm shift in how we view and approach sex. Both individually and as a society.
I think that's a really insightful way to put it. It's about recognizing the inherent power of sex and choosing to wield that power responsibly and consciously.
Yeah, and that brings us to the question of how mindful sex might actually translate to greater satisfaction and deeper connections in relationships. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if we're truly present and attuned to ourselves and our partners during sex, I can see how that could lead to a much more fulfilling and meaningful experience, right? It's like we're moving beyond just the physical sensations and tapping into something deeper.
That's a key point.
Yeah.
And research supports this idea.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that couples who communicate openly about their sexual desires and needs report higher levels of satisfaction and intimacy.
Right.
Mindfulness practices, like focusing on sensations, being present in the moment, can also enhance sexual pleasure and connection.
Exactly.
Because the mindfulness helps us bridge that gap between the physical and emotional aspects of sex, creating a more holistic and enriching experience.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when both partners are fully present and engaged, it creates a sense of vulnerability and trust that can deepen the emotional bond. It's about seeing and being seen, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually as well.
That's a beautiful way to describe it.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if mindful sex could even have a positive impact on society as a whole.
Right.
It's like we're talking about a ripple effect, starting with individual choices and extending outward to our relationships and communities.
That's a fascinating thought, isn't it? If we consider that, our individual experiences and choices contribute to the collective energy field, as Lunarize suggests, then it stands to reason that a more conscious and respectful approach to sex could create a ripple effect of positive change, right? It might sound a bit idealistic, but imagine a world where sex is celebrated as a source of connection, pleasure, and personal growth, rather than something to be feared, exploited, or trivialized.
That's a vision I can get behind. It makes you wonder if we start to see sex as something that deserves our attention and intention.
Right.
How might that transform our relationships and even our society as a whole?
Absolutely.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from the spiritual to the scientific, and it's clear that there's a lot more to unpack when it comes to this concept of mindful sex.
It's a fascinating topic, for sure.
Wow. It's amazing to think about how something as personal and intimate as sex can have these far-reaching implications.
Absolutely.
It's like what started as a deep dive into Lunarize's blog has really expanded into this broader conversation about relationships, personal growth, and even societal change.
It really has.
Yeah. I'm curious, for those listening who might be intrigued by Lunarize's ideas, but are maybe a little skeptical about the whole energy exchange concept, what would you say is the most practical takeaway from this deep dive?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think the most valuable takeaway, regardless of your beliefs, is the importance of approaching sex with awareness and intention. Right? Whether you call it mindful sex or simply conscious relating, the core principle is the same. Being present in the moment, attuned to your own needs and your partner's, communicating openly and honestly. These are skills that can benefit any relationship, romantic or otherwise.
It makes a lot of sense. It's like we're shifting from a purely physical or transactional view of sex to a more holistic and relational.
Exactly. And I think that shift has the potential to transform not just our individual experiences, but also our collective understanding of sexuality.
So where do we go from here? How do we integrate these ideas into our own lives and maybe even start those ripple effects of positive change?
Well, I think the first step is simply becoming more aware of our own attitudes and beliefs about sex. Where did those beliefs come from? Are they serving us? Are they aligned with our values?
Those are some great questions to reflect on.
Yeah.
It's like we're being invited to examine our own sexual scripts. And see if they need a rewrite.
Exactly. And once we have a clearer understanding of our own beliefs, we can start to make more conscious choices about how we approach sex and relationships. We can prioritize communication, cultivate intimacy, and set boundaries that honor our needs and values.
Yeah. It's empowering to realize that we have the agency to shape our own experiences and contribute to creating a more mindful and respectful sexual culture.
It is, isn't? And remember, it's an ongoing journey, not a destination. There's always more to learn and explore, both individually and collectively.
Well said. This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
We started with Lunarize's provocative ideas and ended up exploring a whole range of fascinating and important topics. I think we've given our listeners a lot to ponder.
I hope so. And if this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to continue exploring these ideas. Read books, listen to podcasts, have conversations with your partner, friends, and family. the more we talk about these things openly and honestly, the more we can challenge outdated norms and create a healthier, more fulfilling, and more conscious approach to sexuality.
That's a great reminder that learning and growth don't end when the podcast is over. And hey, who knows? Maybe this deep dive will inspire some of our listeners to embark on their own explorations.
I hope so.
Of mindful sex and conscious relating.
Until next time, keep those minds open, those conversations flowing, and those hearts connected.
And remember, stay curious.